let's move on to this, shall we? Well, ever since the Cavillrine showed up in Deadpool and Wolverine, truly one of the great moments of that film, seeing my boy Henry pop up on screen as Wolverine, a lot of people started insisting that that's it. Henry Cavill's going to be Wolverine, and that's why they're doing it. That's why they're doing it. Henry Cavill's going to be the new Wolverine. By the way, one of the greatest lines in that movie is just you'd almost miss it, but is Deadpool in the background going, "Sir, let me just say we would treat you so much better than those dirtbags up the road." I mean, it's honestly one of the best lines in that movie.
Yeah.
But I said, everybody pump your brakes. Henry Cavill is not going to be the new Wolverine. He's not going to be joining the MCU. Everybody just calm down. It was a nice, fun little thing. Well, then about a year and a half ago, a little more than a year and a half ago, I actually got contacted and told, Campea, I hear you saying that, no, Henry's not going to be in MCU. And, you might be wrong. And for those of you who've watched the show for a long time, you guys might remember this little clip from, again, a little over a year and a half ago. Let's check it out. I had a conversation last night via text that basically laid out that in August, Henry Cavill, or at least Henry Cavill's representation, did indeed have sit-down meetings, not necessarily with Kevin Feige, or maybe with, I don't know, but discussions about a role for Henry Cavill in the MCU. Now, this wasn't from some outlet. This wasn't one from some random Twitter account. I actually talked via text message, with somebody last night who said Henry, or at least his representation, whichever one you want, has indeed engaged in discussions with Marvel about having a role. That flies completely contrary to everything I've been saying, which is like, I don't believe he's going to do this. No, guys, this is just a quick thing. But listen. All right. So that was a little over a year and a half ago. And by looking at my face, about 15 pounds ago. But here's the thing. So I was the guy's like, guys, shush down. No, we're not going to see Henry in the MCU. And then all of a sudden I get a message saying, well, John, you know what? So I had to maybe begrudgingly acknowledge that maybe that was indeed going to be happening. Anyway, so that was a year and a half ago. Now, you guys know in the movie industry, this stuff takes years sometimes to coalesce and actually come together and happen. Well, the reason I bring all that up right now is because there are new reports. You guys have probably seen this over the last 48 hours. A bunch of outlets are running these new reports that are saying that Henry Cavill may indeed be coming into the MCU, which of course would go along. Again, let me be clear though. What I was told a year and a half ago was that him or his people had indeed been talking with Marvel about a possible place for him in the MCU. It was not that it was a done deal. So I don't know, as a matter of fact, that was ever brought to completion, if a deal was ever made. But there are these whispers and reports and rumors going around that it very well could be that he's in there. And so because of that, I want to reemphasize that we need to plant this one in the rumor mill. This one is firmly being put into the hollowed files of the rumor mill for now. But again, it is worth discussing because once again, you're seeing these reports going around. So a couple of years ago, we did a fantasy thing about Henry Cavill. Like, if this is all true, if he could be joining the MCU, who could it be playing? And I thought it would be a good idea now, in the midst of these new rumors surfacing and stuff like that, for us to have a little fun, just a little fun, and maybe revisit the idea of some Henry Cavill, my boy, Henry Cavill, fan casting in the MCU and see how it would be the same and see how it would be different from what I predicted before. So with that said, let's go over and let me give you my, I think makes most sense picks. Not necessarily the 5 best or my top dream roles for him. But the 5 I think would make sense. Okay, here we go. In no particular order. Okay, in no particular order. First one I want to mention here is Victor Creed. Sabretooth. One of the things I learned in like my all-time favorite comic book story, which is X-Men Age of Apocalypse, was that Creed can actually be a really fascinating character. He's not just the mindless brute he's sometimes portrayed as, but he can actually be a really fascinating character. And you know what? I could totally see Henry Cavill playing an elevated, really cool Victor Creed. I could totally see him doing that. And so I'm going to make the first one that I mention here, Victor Creed. The second guy I've got on my list is the one that everybody's going to have on their list, but it makes sense. Captain Britain, Brian Braddock. Psylocke's brother.
Yeah.
Now, some people, I've heard some people say, well, Captain Britain's too on the nose. I'm like, why? Because he's British? You know, probably any actor they get to play him is probably going to be British, right? But I mean, there's also obviously going to be the comparisons to Superman, which is why I'm not going to have Hyperion on my list. I know a lot of people put Hyperion, but I think they're not going to want him to be a Superman-like character if they do indeed bring him over to Marvel. But I think there's a lot of interesting things you could do here with that. And I know this is not a comparison you probably had in your bingo card, but when you look at Enola Holmes, and which I'm not a big fan of the Enola Holmes movies, to be honest with you. I don't hate them, but I'm not a big fan of them. But the chemistry he has with Enola in those is really quite good. And if they did have a Psylocke in this to go along with that character, that could be really interesting, and that could play very well. All right. That's 2 down. Let's go on to the third. And this is the one that everybody's going to say for obvious reasons, but because it's obvious, I also have to have it on my list. Straight up Wolverine. I mean, look, we did just get the Cavillrine. That does not mean he's going to be Wolverine, but come on. Tell me he would not be a great Wolverine. Now, the one argument against it, I don't think you have to worry about this for Sabretooth, and I don't think you have to worry about it for Captain Britain, but maybe a little bit for Wolverine is, Wolverine's a character you would probably plan on having around for a long time. Henry is significantly older than Hugh was when he took over the role. So he might be a little bit old for it, granted, but I think for a character like Wolverine, and I think Henry's definitely young enough that he can still fit in there, so I think Wolverine or the Cavillrine is one that would absolutely have to be on our list. All right. At number 4, again, and these are in no particular order, he is my all-time favorite comic book character. And I think Henry would just be amazing in it. Magneto. I think the single greatest character ever to come out of comic books. And I'm not just saying it because he had white hair in The Witcher. But I think when you look at the age they're going for, when you look at how they're aging Charles, and Henry can easily on screen fit into that age. He can fit into the mid 40s, 100%. He can fit into the mid 40s. And he is such a deep, compelling character. And Henry, if you've never seen The Tudors, you got to watch The Tudors because Henry shows you just how good of an actor he is. I would love seeing him, and I think he would be a fabulous, fabulous Magneto. So that's the next one on my list. The last one I'm going to mention here might catch some people by surprise, but I think if you really think about it, he could be great. Nathan Summers. Cable. I think he would be an amazing Cable. And look, I've seen some online discussions about the idea of Henry Cavill maybe as Cable. And one of the big objections is Henry Cavill, which is the opposite of some of the other roles. Henry Cavill's not old enough to play Cable. But I would make the argument that when you look at, first of all, he's been portrayed in different ways at different times. So I think you could fit him in there. Plus it's a lot easier to age up somebody on camera than it is to age them down. But also Cable, when you understand the time traveling nature of him, you could really, without too much trouble narratively, you could age Cable down a little bit and still have it fit perfectly good into the narrative. But man, you give Henry that Geralt of Rivia white hair, slap on the bodysuit. I think he would be a great Cable. I really do. So again, just running through these are no particular order, but I think Henry would be great as Sabretooth. I think he would be great as Captain Britain. I think he would be great as the Cavillrine. I think he'd be an awesome Magneto, and I think he'd be a really, really good Cable. So I could see him be any of those. Again, I know a lot of other people, guys, are going to throw Hyperion in there. The reason I lean away from Hyperion is because I think that's a little too Superman-like, and I think they might want to separate themselves a little bit from the Superman comparisons. So, but again, I wouldn't be shocked if in a couple of weeks we get a report in Deadline saying Henry Cavill cast as Hyperion. I won't fall out of my chair, but anyway, there's that. Sean, you've seen the rumors and the reports going around. This may or may not end up being, we are filing this under the rumor mill, of course, but in that world where Henry Cavill does join the MCU, now in a post Spider-Man Brand New Day era, and we're heading into the Mutant Saga, what MCU characters could you see him playing potentially?
Well, building off what you just said with Spider-Man and not wanting to just repeat a bunch of the names that you just said, because they're on my list as well, Norman Osborn.
Really?
Where you take some of these different people that he's played, of August Walker, the intimidating, threatening guy in a suit, and that's the behind-the-scenes Norman Osborn. And then he's also, you take the Enola Holmes sensitive version of him, and that's the mentor to Peter Parker. And so you see the charming version, and then behind the scenes, you see this menacing version. And then you look at the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, where you have him playing big and insane, and that's the Green Goblin version of him.
That's
and so
a
you
great pick, man.
Different ways that we've seen him, and you take each of those different, the variety in his performances, and you see it. And that's one where I was just kind of go through, and I heard that and went, oh, that's just interesting. It's so different and weird that I haven't heard people talking about it. That one could be a fun, fresh one to throw in there. Magneto is one that I had. I'm more interested in seeing him play a villain for the most part, to not just be, when he plays Superman, the altruistic hero, the icon. Let's go in the other direction. He's so good as a villain in Mission Impossible
Oh,
Fallout.
so good.
And make him Magneto and be this such a different character and show the intensity that he can bring, the dramatic side that he can bring, but also having this, just that charisma. You can see why people would follow him. And with Eric's worldview, I think there's so much you could do with that. I didn't have Cable on my list, and I had to throw it out. As soon as you said that, I was like, oh, I love him as Cable. That's like, once again, it's kind of this imposing character that brings the intensity that he had as August Walker in Fallout, but on the more heroic side. Like, I saw that when I went, oh man, that would be great. I don't love him as Wolverine, simply because building off a joke and turning that into your main Wolverine feels a little bit odd to me. And I just see it as, like, for a character that doesn't age, he is in his mid-40s. Starting at that point in time, I don't see them doing that for the long run. But I mean, at a point in time in the past, I think he would have been amazing if he did that. And I mean, Gambit's going to be in Doomsday, so clearly they're fine taking a joke in Deadpool and Wolverine and turning it into an actual main point in a movie. So those are the ones that I had. Actually, in Sabretooth, when you mentioned that, I was like, oh, I didn't have that on my list, but I'm going to throw that one on there. That's another one where, once again, I wasn't thinking about it, but as soon as you said it, I went, man, he'd be great with the ferocity that he could. Like, in a Mission Impossible Fallout, this is a guy that pulled off cocking his arms, and you went, oh, this is awesome. And you go, that energy to Sabretooth? Yes, let's do it.
By the way, I'm seeing a couple of names. Like, I've seen a couple of names thrown in a couple of times in our live chat. A couple people saying Bobby Drake, a couple of people, Iceman, a couple of people saying Colossus. The problem with both of those is Henry's too old for both, because they've with the casting they've done so far, they've set their age range for the core X-Men, right? It's that early to mid 20s for our Scotts, our Jeans, stuff like that. And you're going mid 40s for your Charles and Eric range. So I think Henry would be out of the age. I mean, you could change the story of Peter a little bit and make him like a more veteran guy. So, I mean, yeah, I could see him as Colossus. But again, when you look at the casting they've done so far, it just seems like Henry's aged out of those two roles. I just can't see him doing either of those. But what's that, John?
I've got him firmly marked as Shield Agent number 4 playing Galaga in the background.
Shield Agent number 4.
I do like him as Magneto because, you know, if we don't reference Batman v Superman often, but when he was playing evil Superman, you can see he's got that intensity. He could play a Magneto and be very intimidating.
Well, again, like Sean brought it up, like his character in Mission Impossible was so good.
Yeah.
Like I love that character so well. And like, I would be very down to see him as a villain. But again, depending on how you handle Magneto in the movies, because to me, like, it's just the greatest comic book character ever. And I'd love my boy to play that role. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? I mean, after a couple of years ago, I'd heard that they were talking. The rumors have now resurfaced that it looks like maybe he will be joining. Again, remember, we're keeping this under the rumor mill from now. Ain't nobody in any official position has confirmed any of this. It could come and go like a fart in the wind. But if he was going to join, who are the characters you could see Henry Cavill potentially playing in the MCU? Whatever you guys think, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.